Hey, I'm Adam Thompson. I'm a consultant in strategy, organisational design and leadership, and today I want to talk about the importance of not bothering the barista. Let's get right into it. Regular clients, watchers, readers would have seen this a few times, but it's so crucial. I just want to go through it again so I know that I've covered the whole thing. We're talking about what's called theory of constraints by Eli Goldratt.
What is TOC? Can anyone tell me what it is?
Here's our basic work system, like this, where you can see we've got area A or person A, doesn't matter, person B, person C goes through to that. We're going to say all the work has to go through all three. Now, don't get caught up in thinking that this is just about production lines. Okay, we might have a situation where this is person A who works on something and then they email it to team B or something like that, or upload it, and then it goes to team C. The point is, every process has steps. Leonardo da Vinci, think of idea, get materials together, produce some genius, give it to someone who cares. There's still 4 steps to that process, even though the produce genius step, quite tricky. So these are our 4 steps. And what we're going to say is each one of these can produce a certain amount. We're going to say per week. So let's put these amounts up here. A can produce 10, B can produce 5, C can produce 15. Things have to go through the whole system. So how much can the whole system produce? The answer is, of course, 5, because a system can only go as fast as its slowest point. Now think about the lingo we tend to have around this point. We're going to have lingo like weakest link. Even a TV show, you get voted off.
2 votes, you are the weakest link, goodbye.
It's never a point of pride to be the weakest link. Think about the actual name of the idea, theory of constraints. You are the constraint. Think about another word for it, bottleneck. Think about another word for it, back from World War II, it was called choke point. None of these are exactly positive ideas. So I've got my own angle on it. I'm going to call B the pace setter so we can start thinking of B how we really need to, which is the most important amongst equal importance in the whole system. So that's all very well. So what does it mean? Well, I want you to picture that this is a scenario of a cafe and A is taking orders, B is the barista who makes the coffees, and C is the putting the coffees up onto the counter so the person can come and get it. They're our 3 steps involved in the process. Think to yourself, which is the step in the process that most determines the throughput of the whole process? It's naturally going to be B, conveniently the barista, which is the person that makes the coffee. So it becomes pretty obvious that if we want to maximize the throughput of coffee, in other words, minimize the line of people waiting, we need to make sure we're doing what we can for B. And that gives rise to Goldratt's 5 steps that we can apply in terms of making a system work better. Now, the very first step, sometimes called step 0, is to actually identify what the goal is. In this system, conveniently, it's throughput. Other systems, it might be quality or something along a different lines. That's the step 0. Now, step 1, when we get into it, is identify the pace setter. Who is the barista in your process? Which is the step that has the most input on the speed or the effectiveness of the whole system? We need to identify who the barista is. Once we've identified the barista, when I ask this question in workshops, often people now talk about investing more in the barista and maybe putting more people on, which are all valid steps, but that's a step or 2 too early, because step 2 is actually to optimize the pace setter. There are almost always things that you can do immediately that would make life easier for the pace setter. The most obvious one is if there are hassles in terms of the equipment or the way things work, or when break times occur that somehow slow down what the barista can do, then we can just change them immediately. Remember, a minute lost here or a minute lost here has no difference to here, but a minute lost to the barista actually affects the whole system. So there are often some changes that we can make that actually allow the barista to be able to work more continually and in a more focused way if we care. The reason we don't do those changes is because we're normally thinking if we make everyone work like that, then the system wouldn't be viable. And you might be right. But remember, we're only focusing on what we need to do for the barista at this point. Think about it like that, you'll usually find some answers. Significant gains from step 2. Then we go to step 3, which I call supporting the pace setter. So what that means, instantly, what we can do is say to A, stop pumping them out at 10. You're just causing B stress, you're causing things to build up. And if we start asking A and C, you're not being assessed on how much you can produce. You're being assessed on how much you can make the whole system work, which therefore means how much can you support the barista. We can now start to find some things to make life easier. So in our cafe example, if the barista could go faster, if they spent less time trying to interpret the person who's taken the order's handwriting, then what we're going to say is to A, you don't have to go as fast. In fact, you've got capacity to go slower. Spend your time writing them out neatly so the barista never has to come back to you to say, is that a flat white or what?
Can I get a piccolo in a regular cup, and can you fill it up all the way and just put a little bit of milk in it? But I'm only paying for a piccolo because that's what I've just ordered right now.
We've got one more step in terms of improvement. We're running out of room, so I'm going to put it here. Invest in the pace setter. Now we're at the point which most people in workshops can straight away see. In the case of our barista here, we might invest in a coffee machine that can produce more coffee, or we might start changing the resource mix around if that's something that takes a bit longer to do. And here's the good news. If you know the gross profit that you can make from each coffee that goes through, that means you can now do maths on what that moving from 5 to 9 would actually mean in terms of extra money. And now you've got a business case that doesn't even need to use the usual words like strategic or minimizing risk to get over the line, because it'll be an actual genuine business case with quantifiable ways that we can work out that we can make money. And then we've got a final step, which is step 5, which is repeat, but Eli Goldratt points out, repeat carefully. This is the bedrock of theory of constraints you particularly use for production. The book is called The Goal. It is absolute genius. It's worth reading. But not from the point of view of how do I make my production line work better, but for the underlying principles. Look at this. The way the whole system works depends on one point. Think about the 80-20 rule. 20% of the inputs cause 80% of the outputs. Another example of the focusing point. Think about Archimedes. Give me a place to stand and a lever long enough and I can move the earth. In other words, the idea of leverage. Think about what strategy means. Strategy means concentrating the resources on changing things in this spot, which by definition means not changing things in that spot. All of these principles come up and they require us to have the guts to work out what the focusing point is of the system and then to get that to change. And that's the point of being able to do any of this stuff, to make it so that when we take actions, there's half a chance they might even have an effect, which makes us all feel a bit more useful, makes the customers happy, and we're looking to all win. That's all for now. Stay tuned for another video in the near future where I'll go through some ways that you can actually see what the pace setter is. See you next time. Microphone on. Test, test, test.